Joining me now, Art, great to see you, first of all. And, in addition to the fact that price stability, making sure that your dollar today is worth just the same as it is tomorrow or a year from now is their number one job, and they missed that number one job. It's interesting that Powell said he underestimated the supply side of all this. I mean, he underestimated the fact that the 11 million unfilled jobs was going to have an impact on inflation, essentially.
Yeah, let me just say this, if I can, David, for both Janet Yellen and Powell, Jerome Powell. You know, they didn't miss it for the reasons they say. They missed it. They have a model that doesn't forecast inflation accurately or well. They don't have a good model there. And so therefore they puff the numbers, which is really the wrong thing for government agencies to do. You know, understatement is always better than overstatement. Being more cautious is always better than being less cautious. And they were less cautious and they overstated the case for price stability substantially. And they really don't know what causes inflation. They don't have a clue. And they are sitting there pretending they know the answer, and they don't. I mean, we're all out in the dark on inflation. Anyone a year ago couldn't have guessed this. It's here. It's now. It hasn't been temporary. I didn't know whether it was temporary or not. If you go back to my interviews, I wasn't sure that they were wrong. Far from it, but they were wrong. Not because they didn't know, and yet they still talked about it. And that's something that these people should not do. It leads to distrust of government, and that's a real problem, David.
Art, you and I had a great friend who unfortunately passed away. He was the editor of the Wall Street Journal named Robert Bartley. When I was working for Bob Bartley, he said, inflation is very easy. Too much money chasing too few goods. It's that simple. On both sides of that equation, too much money, clearly they've been monetizing the deficit, buying up all of these deficit spending bonds that the Treasury's been issuing and printing money in order to do that. That's the one side, the demand side. On the supply side, the fact is that you have so many people not working, you have so few things being made, that makes each individual thing worth more. I mean, on both sides of that inflation equation, there were inflation pushes. Why? How could they have missed something so fundamental?
Let me go and add a couple more to you if I can. I wrote a piece in the Journal then with Bob, obviously as editor, which was the bitter fruits of devaluation, which was how the devaluation of the U.S. dollar from December 1974 would cause the huge inflation that happened at 72, would cause the huge inflation of the 74, 75. I was lucky I got it right there. We don't have devaluation now. There's also the Larry Summers argument, which is by the government spending increasing demand. All of these are all plausible and feasible ways of getting more inflation. That's all there. What you've said is also very true. The Fed has made money so easy to obtain that there's no way you can restrict inflation if it starts by pulling back on the monetary base. There are no reserve requirements. There are no limits to the expansion of the money supply in the U.S., period. Now, it doesn't mean it's going to cause it, but it doesn't mean, does mean that it can't be stopped by doing that. So we have a lot of things going on, and what bothers me most when I hear Powell and Yellen speak is they're talking gobbledygook. It's this and that, it's oil, it's this, Bob, you've got it, this, it's the harbor in San Pedro, it's something. You know, there is an inflation issue that's overall, it's not only in the U.S., it's in other countries as well. We have an inflation problem in this world, and we don't know how to stop it, but we do know things that we could do to make it better. For example, less expansion of the monetary base. That's exactly what you were saying. Number two, don't spend that bill. Don't give people lots of money to create demand. Another one is don't restrict oil. Have the supplies there so that oil prices aren't the generator. Wage demands are a great big thing. Don't raise minimum wages. Don't raise taxes and get people to move out of the labor force. All of these are things they should be doing, and they're not doing one of them, David.
Yeah, and by the way, I disagree on one point. I think you're right. They're talking about oil in a way that doesn't necessarily reflect, but killing off our energy independence has led to hugely higher gas and energy prices all over the place. So
and all of these have. There's not one thing they haven't done that isn't inflationary.
Art,
not one thing.
We have run out of time, my friend. Thank you so much for being here. Great to see you.
But it is great.
It's been great.
Thank you, David.
Always is.